Okay, you guys are good.
Yeah, that's for later.
Yeah, no, we didn't.
For later.
For
I
later.
think for later. We just talked.
I'm a good guy to talk.
You guys are all set. You're ready.
All right. All right, well, I'd like to welcome everyone. We've just returned to public session from our earlier executive session. When we called the meeting.
Sorry, I'll mute that.
Okay, when we called the meeting to order, we went right into executive session. So we are going to now have pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Right. I would like to accept tonight's agenda for June 14th, 2021, Flag Day, if I may have a second. All in favor? Yes? Any opposed? So accepted. We have a series of presentations tonight, and we are going to begin with a presentation on student evaluation, promotion, and placement. Dr. Heather Lyon, take it away.
You have that presentation, or should I be sharing that?
I'm not sure. You could send it to me real quick and I could.
Or do you want me to just air
Is
tame
it on
it?
this one?
Nope. Do you want me to air tame
If
it?
you share with me, I can,
Yeah,
do you want to share screen so that people at home can see?
yeah. Sorry for the hold up. We were not able to be in here today. That's the fun.
Well, while you're waiting for that, so the genesis of the student evaluation, promotion, and placement handbook is to be a little bit more, I guess, scientific in our approach to placement of students in a variety of different programs and courses that exist across our district, including our enrichment program, our accelerated programs, certain instances, some of our special education programs or student support programs, into not that this, all of this was happening, but it was happening in pockets, and it was happening sometimes with not a connection between buildings, and it wasn't a flow. So kind of bubbling out of policy committee, this has developed. And I just appreciate the energy and effort that Dr. Ryan and the principals have put in to get us to this point. Still some tweaking to do, but you know, I think that we have tried to be at Lewiston-Porter responsive to families. The goal of this is responsive to families and students in terms of making sure that we are providing an education that supports them and or challenges them. And that's difficult, you know, in the way that public school is compartmentalized into grades and into classes. And it's so you have to work within the context of that compartmentalized process, which, you know, without getting into the history of public education and progressive movement of the early part of the 20th century, which we could go into for, I could talk for quite a long time.
Dissertation.
Absolutely. But nevertheless, without getting too detailed into that, we could talk about tailored time studies. And I'll turn it over to Dr. Ryan, who will tell us kind of where we're at in the process. And we're getting close.
Is it the board's preference that I go to the podium, or?
It's my preference that you go to the podium. It's very official, you know. Don't you think it's official when they do that?
I'm nothing short of official.
You can really have.
It does.
You're good.
Podium always adds a little bit.
All right, so I am, thank you. So, the whole purpose of this, as Mr. Casari just said, is to really create procedures that are aligned with our policies, specifically policy 7210, student evaluation, promotion, and placement, and then 7212, response to intervention. And the goal here is to create consistent and clear expectations for all stakeholders so that students' educational experiences are optimized to their highest level. So it should not be dependent on who you know, meaning who your parent is or who your teacher is. It should be your placement and promotion, your evaluation should be based on what you know as a student. So there are 4 sections in the handbook itself, and they just align to the policies and what the policies cover. So the first policy, that 7210, covers the first 3 areas of evaluation, placement, and promotion. And then the last one, 7212, is specific to RTI. And then each section has specific subheadings. So there's a section in there related to this is how we handle the implementation of this policy as a district, and then at each of the buildings, if there are any discrete differences for each of the buildings. So each section starts with a quoted highlight from the policy. The policies are several pages long, so it's not the whole policy, but just the highlight from it. And then there are subheadings, and so you can see what that looks like here. So student evaluation, it talks a little bit about the policy, and then there's the district-wide piece. I also want to note that there is an appeals process outlined in this handbook, that in the event that a family or a student thinks that the process got it wrong for their child, we want them to be able to have a way to ameliorate that situation. If we go back though to the intention here, this is meant to be objective. And so when an appeal could come up, remember that it's not appealing an opinion, likely, it's appealing the process and whether or not the process was followed, because this is meant to be objective. And the appeal goes to a committee, not just one person, which is important here, because again, it should be based on not just one person's say. So this document will be a living document that's meant to be shared publicly on our website and reviewed annually or more frequently as needed. So the goal here is that we're going to try to be consistent and objective for all buildings so that they're aligned to ensure that our students are getting exactly what they need based on what they know. In other words, that we're all aiming higher for the same target. So this has been a collaborative process. So I just want to say thank you to all of the people who have provided input and feedback, including all the folks who stayed there. Any questions or feedback?
I have some feedback. I'm happy to see the appeal component within the document, because I think very often sometimes children will test poorly in one situation. When we're looking at placement, and not so much promotion, but placement. If a child isn't testing well, do we have other ways of looking at that child for promotion, not promotion, placement in a classroom?
Yeah, so many of our pieces many of our decisions are based on triangulated evidence, not just one piece of evidence. And
So it's not like just use one. We'll look at other things as for instance.
Yeah.
Or
thank you. Anything else? As with all things, when you have a process that includes multiple people, it takes a little bit of time because of the communication. But as a district, we're a professional learning community, and so the collective intelligence of the team is greater than anything one person can bring to it. So I appreciate everybody's patience with this process.
Just so that the board understands, we had talked a little bit about timeline and policy. What is the timeline?
The timeline is that this is set to go by September 1st, so that way we have it in place for the coming year. There are still some things that we are just revising and tweaking and making sure that we have in place that really err on the side of making good decisions for our students.
when will there be regular reviews of the implementation of the, for the, for the document?
Yeah, we're gonna have to, especially in the beginning, because this is our best guess as to what's going to be best for kids. And because we're at the beginning start of or end of this rather than something that we've done for many years and we know how it goes, we're gonna have to carefully monitor. the
So it is a
implementation.
again, to stress, it is a working document.
That's correct.
Well, and to the extent that our board has been very consistent in terms of its regular policy review, it will 3-year cycle, we go through all of the policies. So from a board standpoint, it'll be implemented and then we'll get back to it every 3 years so that you can ask questions.
But of course, it can be tweaked in between.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah, it will be looked at from an implementation process, but from a policy standpoint, which is 30,000 feet review, we do that every 3 years. So we would get around to these are, what's the numbers again, 7,000s?
That's, yeah.
So we'll get around to the 7,000s. We did those when last year?
2020 was the last, yeah.
But this is how program will be.
Probably. The handbook needs to be,
Right.
especially in the beginning, evaluated much more frequently and reviewed much more frequently. At the same time, you can't just.
But that's not necessarily to the policy.
That's
It's
correct.
just- Yeah. Yes.
It can't be changed so often that our parents and our families don't know, because they're aiming at what was, and it was changed on them. So whatever changes would need to be communicated very clearly to families so that they would know. I think there's a question.
Yeah, the evaluation, is it subject-based or is it whole student picture based?
The policy itself speaks to just really assessment of students. That's what it's talking about with evaluation. And it's just basically saying, the policy itself basically says that students will be evaluated regularly, frequently, and that one assessment will not dictate a student's outcome. And that the New York State assessments will not dictate a student's outcome. I am paraphrasing that policy.
So for these 4 sections, I'm assuming you're gonna be putting like flowcharts in place so that there's a system to follow.
Where it applies, yes. So for example, the PEC has a retention flow chart that will be in there. For accelerated math for students who may, there's the potential that the student could skip a grade level in math. There's a flow chart there. So where applicable, yes.
Are you anticipating, with having done, and this might not be connected directly with this presentation, but are you anticipating that you're going to have children in challenge class placement this year because of remote learning? Because early on, children were talking about, they were getting to a quicker at home when they were in school because they moved forward.
No, I'm not anticipating that. What you need to know about that Apex program, because that's really what you're referring to, is that with Apex, students do not fail who do it, because you can't move forward if you didn't do well with this part. It's mastery based. So it makes you go back, redo the learning, probably skimmed a little too much, went through it a little too quickly. And so it's you go back and then redo the test or quiz in order to move forward.
But we did have a discussion about that earlier in the year.
Earlier in the year, the discussion was, could a student, because we were pacing our students, so that way they would not finish the course in like the first semester and be sitting around twiddling their thumbs later on.
But in general, this is really focused on the students that need support through RTI. You have to remember that 99.5% or greater of our students work at grade level in courses. Generally, we have approximately 2,000 students in the district, so kids, in terms of students that are being accelerated beyond grade level, either in a particular subject or a full grade level, it's a very small number that occurs at.
Well, I'm glad to see it in many districts, but I'm glad to see that we're looking at RTI, this intervention for children who are struggling.
Now, at the secondary level,
Consistency in that program is very
Yeah.
important.
the secondary, well, right, and so the support level. But at the secondary level, in terms of the advancement level, we do have significant opportunity once you get to 7th grade, 8th grade, and then into the high school when we're talking about taking advanced courses, So so we've got that enrichment program that has a fair number of students involved in it that we hope will help those kids move toward that. But generally, a very, very small percentage of students, like I say, if you have in the elementary grades, if you have 10 students involved in advancement at grade level in a particular subject, across K through 5, generally, it's about that number. You're talking 0.5% or less.
What Mr. Kasseri and you are talking about, though, is almost the synthesis of where this came from, where it generated from, because for RTI, for our students who are struggling, we really do have a standard protocol. That's what it's called, the standard protocol, where you have students, we administer Ymca, and we look at how the students perform, and based on how the students perform, they qualify for RTI. I am simplifying this, but stick with me. The other iteration of that model is not the standard protocol, it's a problem solving model. Now with the problem solving model, you are dependent on subjectivity. You could have 2 teachers, and Marissa and I are both teachers, and I am somebody who believes strongly that my kids need help. Marissa is somebody who believes strongly that she can take care of her kids in her classroom. And so even though we both have a child who has an Ames Web score of, let's say, in the 10th percentile, I'm making this up, but I am saying, please work with my kid reading teacher, and I'm going to the reading teacher in the hallway and saying, this kid needs help. I didn't even look at Ames Web, I'm just saying this kid needs help. Marissa didn't look at the kid in Ames Web either, and she's saying, I got this. Well, it shouldn't be based on the teacher, whether or not the teacher's opinion is that the child would qualify or not. That's the problem solving model. And when you have a problem solving model, what happens is teachers approach other teachers in the hallway. So a classroom teacher approaches the reading teacher in the hallway and says, do you have room on your roster? I have this kid who really needs some help. Can you work with them? And there isn't an objective mechanism for how that works. And so that objective mechanism is called a standard protocol, and we have that in place. What we did not have in place necessarily was a standard protocol on the other end of the spectrum. So not in the 10th percentile, but in the 98th percentile. What are we doing for those kids who need more, not remediation, but enrichment, extension, acceleration? So what this is doing, in part, it has created a flow chart that has that standard protocol. So every time we administer AIMSweb, we follow a standard protocol for students who might be at the lower end who might need more, and for students who are at the upper end who might need more.
Clarify for me. You said, teachers' opinion isn't an indicator, isn't the reason for it. But isn't being taken into consideration?
So yes, so I always say with teachers who ask that question, because it comes up, right? I've been a teacher for 30 years. I've been working with kids. I know this is a kid who's struggling, right? So this is the difference. The standard protocol is the mechanism by which, imagine you go to the doctor and you felt great, but the doctor comes back with results that say, we actually need to do some type of intervention here. Your cholesterol is high or something, right? Something needs to happen. You didn't even know. That's the doctor telling you. There are instances, though, where you go to the doctor and you say something's going on. And so the mechanism that is similar to that would be the student support team, SST model. So, okay, I am seeing that these kids struggle in my class, and look, they were picked up through the standard protocol and are receiving now this intervention. But I have Johnny over here, who Johnny didn't, AIMSweb scores for Johnny were high enough so that Johnny doesn't qualify with the standard protocol, but something's going on with Johnny. Johnny needs help. So now there's a different mechanism in order to advocate for Johnny getting help. That mechanism is through the student support.
But on the flip side, we also have maybe an earlier intervention for kids that maybe, just say, are bored in specific classes that need more. You have that then at the same time, right? Is what you're saying.
That's the other end of the spectrum.
Yes.
Yes.
The
Yes.
72-10.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
We're trying to hone that. That's the more difficult one.
It's because I have to say most schools don't really give a lot of time or attention to that end of the spectrum. There's a lot in regulation and in research about students who need remedial support. There's less about students who need enrichment and extension and acceleration. And so kudos to Lewiston-Porter for really moving in this direction. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
While they're making that transition, I wasn't rudely on my phone, that Mr. Helgash was texting me. So believe it or not, there was a lacrosse game, girls lacrosse, and 2 softball games going on. And so there was quite a bit of chaos out on the field, but everybody is safe and quite wet. But,
Yeah.
safe.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Klepka. ARPCRRSA, federal fund grant presentation?
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I shouldn't say font, you should say font.
Alan Fund.
Yeah.
Second.
Candid camera, Alan Front.
Pulling that out of nowhere.
Yes, very much so. It says fun there, though. It should have said fun, but it was a little bit of a misprint. Jody caught it.
The fun's over here.
It could be. We call it
So I didn't copy this for you, but this is gonna actually be online. So
So this is our public, so yeah, Dr. Grupka is going to, we are making our public presentation of our use of the $3.4 million that we are in the process of receiving from the federal government to support our students that, and support our, not just our students, but support our school district in terms of coming out of COVID, for lack of a better term. And so we have to focus on learning loss. We have to focus on continued health and safety. We have to focus on social emotional well-being of our students. And so that is, as you will see through the process of how we have gone about the development of these federal grant programs is the focus, those three areas. So take it away, Dr. Becker.
I'm gonna take it away. So, you know that we got the CARES Act money up front in the beginning of this year, but it was taken out as a deduction of our state aid and returned, and then we had to share some of it. So while we got some money, it was really kind of not actual additional funds. It was set aside money. This is actually funds that we are getting funneled down through the federal government through the state. So CRSSA, which we're fondly calling CARES 2, we will receive $1.886 million. And this money can be used, if this is kind of unusual for federal funds, it goes back to when the pandemic started. So it goes back to March 13, 20 through 9/30/2022. But under the tidings amendment, you can actually carry it forward another year. This is also, because it's going backwards, they said that with these funds, there is no supplement versus the plant measure. So when you talk about federal funds, typically what that means is it's funds that you can only use for services that you don't already have. It's for new things. With these funds, they're not for new things. You can go back, you can use it for salaries that existed, things that you did during COVID. There's also no equitable services. Equitable services language is basically tells us that we have to take a portion of our funds for our students who go to non-public schools, private schools, Catholic schools, any parochial school, and they get a share of that funding. So with the CARES 2, the federal government is giving the Catholics and the privates all of their own funds, parochial schools, and that is actually, those funds are all staying with us. American Rescue Plan is a little bit it's a different pot of money. We're going to get $1.6 million. And that again, funding goes backwards through 3/13/20 through 9/30/23. So it's a year longer, but under the tidings, it goes even further. There is a lot of talk that they're going to extend that out to 25. It hasn't been yet, but there's some conversations about that. They're saying that you need to spend a minimum of 12.5% in each year. There's 90% of the money goes directly to the school districts. The other 10% goes to the state, and they get to divvy it out however they want. So when you look at 90% of what our 90% is, our 90% share, 20% of that 90% has to go to learning loss. So learning loss can be a variety of things, including summer programming. And you're going to see it could be after school. There's a whole laundry list of things that you can use this for. Here we go. So uses for the American Rescue Plan and CARES funds. You can provide principals and school leaders with resources they need to address the needs of individual schools, activities to address the needs of low-income students or children with disabilities, English language learners, racial ethnic minorities. This language is all right out of CARES Act. It's really not any different than CARES 1. Planning for coordinating and implementing activities during long-term closures, purchasing educational technology, hardware, software for connectivity, providing mental health services and mental health supports. For ARP is a little bit different, and ARP, in addition to that, because there's that 20% learning loss, it's for planning and implementing activities related to summer learning.
supplemental after-school programs, including providing classroom instruction or online learning during the summer months. And then there's a whole section on learning loss. You could buy assessments with it. You can implement evidence-based activities. There's a variety of family supports, tracking student attendance, improving student engagement. But they're this is a very student-centered funding mechanism. The other thing that's interesting with ARP, so when you apply for federal funds, in the past, you had to do this maintenance of effort to show that you weren't inappropriately or disproportionately spending funds on some schools other than others, so they wanted it diverted to Title I. It's no longer called maintenance of effort, and it's a little bit more complex of a process, and it is now called maintenance of equity. And some of the regulations came out, although the application did not yet. So we're doing this now, even though we don't have the process. We don't really have the process for applying because we are required by July 1st to post this on our website, prioritizing our spending. We have to also online have our plan for safe return to in-person instruction, which of course we already have because we're already there. We have to address the effects of the pandemic disruption on students, which is what we're going to do with the plan that we have moving forward. We can purchase technology, invest in early childhood ed, and other purposes, including operating schools and meeting the needs of students. To the extent that our plans would recur beyond the availability of these funds, we have to identify either what will happen to the program, whether it's not needed, or how we will continue the program beyond the length of the grant. And that's only for the American Rescue Plan. Okay, so we have to seek public comment. That's why we're doing this here today.
Just click off of it and then. There you go.
So our 21-22 proposed ARP grant funding. So this year for summer school, we're looking at a summer school. It'll include our summer school program. It'll include high school, middle school credit recovery, high school credit accrual. So whatever classes that BOCES was offering, we will now offer those as new programs here. The reason we're doing these are, BOCES right now is doing their whole summer program remotely, and we felt it was really important to have the kids live in seats. If we have kids that weren't doing well, specifically kids who maybe were remote, we felt it was really important that we have them here where there's supervision and some guidance and certified teachers available daily. And our principals are here, so they're going to talk more about those later. We're going to have a middle school summer learning program. That is a 2-week program where we were offering 3 2-week sessions. That's going to be in math and ELA. And then an elementary summer camp, and we have 2 3-week sessions for that. That is going to be IC and PEC students together, so K through 5. At the PEC, we're having all of our summer programs at the high school and PEC. 2 reasons: no construction there in those buildings, and they're both air conditioned. So that just really made a lot of sense. In addition, we are hiring under this grant 4 teachers and coordinators. So we have talked a long time about a social worker at the high school. That'll mean that we have a social worker now at every building full time. An academic achievement center coordinator. So at the high school, one of the things I talked about in learning loss is after school programs, but sometimes it's easier when you can do it during the school day. So this person will be working with other colleges, universities, and with some of our teachers to actually do tutoring and tutorial work during the day. We have an elementary program coordinator. This person will work with both the IC and PEC principals to provide support for students in crisis, to help implement programs, to work on some of the special social emotional programs that we're working with. And then we have our AL teacher in here. So we are bringing AL the Learning Center back. So that position is in here as well. We are gonna pay for the benefits out of this grant, and also, we did buy some classroom furniture, and we bought that actually last year so that we can have our kids back in lunches. And we're gonna put those funds in here, because that is a nice one-time purchase. This is, again, the 2023 proposed grant spending. So for this grant, we actually have to show it year to year. And the elementary summer camp, the following year will be about 99,000. We have 4 FTE teachers the next year. And again, benefits. And you will see the following year, we are not anticipating summer school. By then, we feel like at the elementary level, the big learning loss that was related to COVID should mostly have worked itself out. We will still, of course, have our regular programs during the year. And we still have our 4 FTE teachers and coordinators. So along,
You skipped over the CARES number.
yeah, I think we're gonna have to look for it because
Slide 6, you just went over it.
I did.
Saw it, just scroll back.
Let me, yeah, okay, I'll do this real quick, and then I'll go back to the end of the other one. I don't know how I missed this on here. So the corrective plan, this does not have to be discussed publicly and doesn't have to be posted online, but I think it's wise that you understand what we're doing with this money. So we are looking, and I laid this out a little differently, but for 3 years, we are anticipating paying 3 TOSAs for math instructional specialists, so teachers on special assignment is what TOSA means. And they will be working at our buildings. I have 2 at the IEC and 1 at the PEC. And they will be working with kids who are really struggling in math. They will not only just be working with students who are in need of assistance, but they will also be working with teachers. If the teachers need support, they can work together and collaboratively. We have 1 math RTI teacher at the middle school. That is a teacher that we currently have doing this at the middle school. But she's only doing it part-time now and part-time teaching, and she will be doing more of the RTI, which is response to intervention at the middle school. We have 2 TOSA English language arts specialists. And then in the 21-23, so for 2 years, we have a 1.0. I'm sorry, that shouldn't be there. That's math RTI. That position is going to be moving or brought back into the budget following that. And then 21-22, we have a 1.0 reading at the PEC. That position is only in for a year, because afterwards we're grabbing that back into our budget. Okay, so if these positions are falling off, we're hoping to absorb them into the budget.
As needed.
If needed, yeah. So, go back.
You actually skipped over the, go back one.
So as I said, with ARP has different than CRSSA, there is a requirement for long-term planning. And we are going to have to submit a plan that shows what will happen afterwards. So as I said, secondary summer school credit recovery and credit accrual will return BOCES after year 1 or 2. It's our hope by then they will have an in-person program. We're finding out now with enrollment that we probably have some additional funds in that summer school pot. So we may be able to run it a little longer. But it's our hope, it's our hope that they will have those programs back fully. Elementary summer camp and middle summer camp are created to remediate learning loss. 1 or 2 years, we're hoping. If it takes 2 years, that's fine. The 4 FTE positions, we do plan to recover in the general fund through employee attrition by the end of the 3rd year. Do you have any questions on this portion?
I do have a question, of course.
Yeah.
You referred to it as the elementary summer.
Yes.
It's not like a day, a learning.
It's a learning camp. So, yeah, so we have certified.
You're
Jump to.
You're gonna hear the details of
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Older question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's a really, no, I mean, it's an important question. This grant is about learning loss. So,
Well, there's day camps that are out there in some districts, so I was just wondering if it was a day camp or if it was an
No, in fact, it's a learning camp, and what we did was we partnered with the YMCA so that they have a wraparound, and we are providing transportation. So that is a piece of it.
So we're going to get into the details of it right now. It actually says Dr. Becker, that's really Dr. Summer School Program, that's Dr. Lyon. Is
I already asked my quota.
I only have one slide, so.
right, but really it's Mrs. Larson and Mr. Hill who have
I'll
really
have them for you here.
who are working with the teachers that you selected to work the programs that are building the program.
All right,
I am gonna turn this over then.
to me, I have my one slide and then I'm turning it over to the principals. So, and Dr. Grubka did a really nice job really of covering this piece, which is that we really have two simultaneous summer opportunities taking place on campus. So K-8, there are going to be summer camps, if you will, that are academic in nature, that are focused on mitigating summer loss. So meaning we know that summer loss exists, that exists for all students. What we're trying to do is make that loss less steep in terms of that trajectory. And so in order to do that, we're going to focus on math and ELA and then social learning. That is K-8. Students who are participating in that have been identified based on their progress this school year. So that is not open to everybody per se. It is open for kids who need it the most because we want to make sure that we are meeting their needs. For summer school, that is for secondary students in grades 6 through 12 who have failed 1 or 2 courses. And so they are looking for credit recovery through our summer school programming. And we are also offering credit accrual, which both of these pieces, credit recovery and credit accrual, have traditionally run through an on-campus summer school experience that students would go to Niagara Falls to participate. And that is run by BOCES at Niagara Falls. This year, as Dr. Grubka shared, they're doing a hybrid program with that, and we did not want our students to have a hybrid experience over the summer. So the summer school is going to be on campus at Newport using APEX, which was used during the school year. And for some people who are here or families at home who may be listening and like, wait a minute, if my kid was a remote kid, they had APEX during the school year, and now we're treating them with the same medicine that didn't solve the rash in the first place. What we have found is that most of our students who struggle with APEX, it's not the learning that they're struggling with, it is the discipline, the self-discipline required to do that well. And so our students who are participating in credit recovery are coming to campus. They are going to be here under the supervision of our teachers and doing that learning. I am giving a lot away for my one slide, and so I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Hill and Mrs. Larson. And you can direct all questions their way.
Thank you to both Dr. Grubka and Dr. Lyon for really summarizing where we're at. I think they very much explained the why and the what. And the fact that not only is the main goal of these summer learning camps that we'll start with is to mitigate what we call and refer to in elementary as the summer slide. That happened pre-pandemic, it will happen post-pandemic, but these children are already at a loss for being in a hybrid learning model or a remote learning model, which was certainly a different pathway for our students this year. So with this structure and support that we are creating with these summer learning camps, these children will absolutely not have that degree of summer slide that we would expect in a normal school year, especially post-pandemic. So we're really excited to be offering this opportunity K through 8. And we're going to show you a little bit about how many kids are participating. But before we do that, I want to make sure, now that you understand the why, that you truly understand the who. We started at the K through 5 level, inviting 222 students, K through 5, based on our evidence that they needed mitigation the strongest. Okay, that was through sitting down with our principals, both I and Mrs. Rodriguez sat down with our peer coordinators, and we looked at criteria. Web Plus was certainly one of those criteria, because that is standardized assessment given 3 times a year. So that was one of the first pathways in. And then the second pathway was common formative assessment data from the classroom teachers. So it was really those 2 pathways coming together. So the teachers very quickly, they know their children. This did not take long. They very quickly came up with their recommendations and had them to us within a few days. That was really important because we were able to start inviting families, informing them of the why and what, and find out who is going to accept these invitations. So Mr. Hill and I worked on a Google format, which our families have gotten quite accustomed to this year, as we have been eliciting feedback throughout the pandemic. And I would say within 48 hours, we already had over 80 responses that said, yes, I'm in, this is great. And then we waited a few more days, but within about a week, we were, up to around that 100 mark. So then we reopened it to the next level of students who may not be below benchmark in Ames Web, but certainly is hovering around that benchmark or just right above. And those teachers then made a second list of recommendations, especially at the 4th and 5th level. And I know Mrs. Jarzewski's here today. She helped with this. I sent out communication with the 5th grade team because that was, and it still is our lowest number, but we were able to double it. We only had 8 who responded and accepted the invitation initially, and the teachers helping, reaching out to families. I reached out to some families that I knew their child could really need it, explained it a little more thoroughly. We were able to create 2 classes of 5th grade students. So we're really excited about that. As you know, it's going to take place in the air conditioning building at the PPC, and we are going to transport anyone who needs it. In fact, we're really going to start to close registration today, so these numbers are pretty hard. We had one more ad this morning, and then we are going to turn over all the transportation information to Dr. Krupa's office, and we can start routing these bus. So we can go to the next slide.
Mind if I talk a little bit?
Yeah,
more
go
on
right
this
ahead.
one about secondary? Okay. So again, I think that the why and the what for both elementary and secondary have been covered. I'll talk a little more about the who at the secondary level. Starting with middle school learning camp, which was a good question. Those students similarly were selected and recommended rather based on Ames Web data. We recommended just shy of 90 students between grades 6 and 8. Those invitations in a similar way were sent out using a Google form to those families. And then we gave those students a chance to, or those families a chance to reply. And much like Dr. Lyon talked about earlier, there is that standard protocol of the students identified via Ames Web, but then there's also the teachers that say, hey, I know some more students that maybe they make your list, but we think they'd really benefit from this. Right now, they are currently in the process of recommending even more students because we have the room for it. to then take advantage. And again, they're getting that registration link. And once that is all taken care of, then we'll have our numbers finalized. We originally set it up for 6 through 8 to have 3 2-week sessions. Our numbers didn't get as high as we thought they were, so we're going to switch to 2 3-week sessions to mirror the elementary. We also thought that that would make sense because of families, you know, they may have a sibling that's doing the first 3-week session. So we thought we would mirror that for the middle school students as well. It'll also give those students an extra week to help with their learning mitigation. So the when is going to be the same as elementary, but the where will be in the high school. Again, for those reasons discussed, nice air conditioning environment. We also have the 2 other credit recovery and credit accrual. Those are high school programs where if students fell between 2 of their 4 subjects, they have the opportunity to make up those credits via Apex, as Dr. Lyon described. We also have that ability for middle school students if they fail subjects, their 4 subjects, they're able to come back through Apex and make up that work. And again, that'll take place in the high school. We have a certified teacher per subject area that they will have access to in person. So we feel that that will help with any of the loss that they may have experienced, given the unique circumstances of this year.
Okay, so with that, at the K through 5 level, these are our numbers as of this hour. And I'm going to start to close that link at the end of the day today. So we actually, there's one not reflected there, I can see, but we actually have 149 student responses who have accepted our invitation as of today. And there's the breakdown in terms of grade levels. As you can see, our highest invites that went out, not just the invites, but the acceptance was in 3rd grade. We decided that as an administrative team, we wanted this learning experience to be a good teacher to student ratio. So we were capping classes at 15. And so when 3rd grade went over the 30 mark, we added another class. And so what we've done between the 2 sessions is we actually have a K through 5 class in each session. So those numbers are balanced out between the sessions. And in 3rd grade, the 2nd session, we'll be offering 2 sections of 3rd grade. So for example, in 3rd grade, you're going to have in session 1, the 11 students participating. And in session 2, you're going to have a class of 10 and another class of 11. So we did the balancing. The invites are actually out. Some went out today, more will go out tomorrow. But the invites, my eyes aren't that good. So the invites look like this, and it basically is just confirming for the parent at this point. They've already been invited, but this is really, I should call it a confirmation of the session that their child will be attending. There were some parents that said, we can only attend session 1, we can only attend session 2, so we're honoring that. But there were many parents, in fact, over 50%, who said, you know, my first choice might be this, but I can do it. So that helped us to balance between all the classes. So parents right now, they need to know this week, this is the session my child is committed to. So they're going to get this confirmation, and then by the end of June, before everything gets started, they will get a packet sent out to their home, not only about transportation, but also who their teacher will be. And we are creating a little family handbook so they understand the expectations and the opportunities of this program. So I am so happy about this. Dr. Lyon knows this, and Dr. Ymca. In the beginning, we didn't know if we were going to be hiring on the outside or we would have enough of our own report teachers who would be able to really lead these classes. And I'm happy to say that every report teacher that applied fit our exact needs. So everyone got 1 week if they only wanted one, most wanted 2 sessions, and we were able to accommodate that and really put people in classrooms with the curriculum that they normally instruct. So that worked out really well. We didn't have to hire anyone from outside of Lewiston-Porter. And as a result of that, we were going to use our own resources, our own curriculum to mitigate that learning loss. So, for example, for ELA and writing, we'll be using our Lucy Calkins workshop model, the unit to study. We'll also use some other resources we have, technology, the RAS Kids, our Herbal libraries, but we will also use all of our current resources, which the kids are used to, so that's going to be continuity of learning. We certainly couldn't have expected that of a teacher who has not been trained with our curriculum. Our workshop model, we were trained in that for 3 years. So we're really, really pleased that people like Jill stepped up and we were able to offer this. In addition, we will be offering excuse me, student emotional learning experiences. This is a big foundation. Mr. Kasiri talked about it earlier, that not only do we need to bring kids to campus to mitigate learning, but we have to take care of their social and emotional needs. Thank you. And so they're going to be taught things like the Leader in Me habits that they're already learning about. There will be restorative circles, and we are going to, as you can see, we have theme-based learning. So for elementary, they will really be invited into this world where we're going to integrate science and social studies. They're going to discover Africa, and we're going to make it a very engaging learning environment. Sorry, I'm losing my voice today. Any questions about elementary?
First, are we doing anything for parents who might not get a late acceptance or a late interest?
So we've reached.
Deadline?
So we've reached out again and again to families, those that are highest need. I think the word is now out there. So some families have reached out to us and we've been able to accommodate them. If we still have space in a section, which some of them we do, I don't have any problem adding as long as there's space. At this point, we wouldn't add more staffing because we're gonna have an orientation at the end of June. We really have to move the program forward.
But if you have space.
But if we had space, I wouldn't have a problem with that. It's just we're also trying to accommodate all the transportation. So yes, absolutely.
So you use the term invited and accepted quite often. This was, no matter what your a student need was anticipated, it was still up to the parent whether or not they attended. We did.
That's right. This isn't something we could make. No. This is definitely an extension of our programs. It is an opportunity, but it is not mandatory. Okay.
I want to also emphasize that this is not an extended school year program, which is something that would be on a student's IEP that would be provided for that child's IEP. This is not that. So that's important because that can get really confusing really quickly.
So that's why.
We do have a couple situations like that that we're working with. Actually, we're working with the city of Niagara Falls.
Right, so that's why we keep using the word camp versus summer school. So these are learning camps where summer school has different requirements and mandates within those requirements. This funding really has offered our families and our students a tremendous opportunity. And I have to tell you, our teachers that are running it, there's probably a little bit of crazy in them, I can imagine. We're talking every day. And one just left my office at 5 o'clock today and said, I want to do this, this, and this. And they're really, we're all going to kind of embrace around this theme so that we have 150 students coming. We want them to come back and we want them to enjoy the learning. And that's such an important part of working with reluctant learners where learning has already for them in 1 to 6 years already been a challenge. So we really have to capitalize on the small group environment. We have to capitalize on how we're going to engage students, perhaps a little differently than we're able to in larger class sizes. The theme always adds a nice backdrop to that. We do have a couple of presentations planned, again, to make it highly joyful and engaging. The presentations we have planned and some of these things around the theme, like every kid's going to get a passport. They're going to learn about their world and animals that live in different places in the world. That kind of thing in a Lucy Poppins writing workshop helps to prompt them to engage in the writing process. For the children that are coming, they don't necessarily love to read and write. And so we're hoping that this program that is so focused on that process will engage those learners in a new and different way. So we're really excited about it. And the teachers who are going to be leading these classrooms they are dynamic and they have so many ideas, some of which I'll be talking to Patty about.
Do you have plans to progress monitor that, or is it more informal? Like,
Yeah, so we wouldn't be progress monitoring in the way that we do with Ymca, 3 times a year, the benchmarking, and then progress monitoring in between for reading specialists. But we are using our early resources. So like I have all the data of where students are reading right now, and they will know, the teachers will have data at their fingertips on where to engage them, so they don't have to start all over. We have the data where they left 2 weeks before they come back to us.
I think it'd be interesting to see how those kids do in the fall when they come
Sure.
back and then, you know,
So the, although we will be grabbing them, we will be doing individual and small group conferencing around goals. So,
We are capturing at the elementary level, almost 17% of our population. That's really good.
Yeah.
It's really quite good. You know, if you look at it in terms of percentile, we are capturing, it would appear, so we are capturing those kids that definitely need it based on the population.
so any other questions about elementary? And then we're going to talk a little more about middle and high school. Yes.
My question is more to the Ymca assessment. Do you also have kids that were remote that are coming to summer?
Yes, we do. We do have some. In fact, our remote teachers were a part of the recommendation teams. So they recommended a series of students, and we do have some that have accepted. So I think that's really a plus for those kids as they start to transition back. I'm glad you mentioned that because I wanted to mention this is.
I was interested in the assessment for that, but I don't think they necessarily took the Ymca.
Well, they had the choice to come in. They were always invited to come in, and some families chose that, but not too many. So it was really based on the data that remote teacher collected on a weekly basis. But they definitely had some strong recommendations on who needed it and who might need this as a transition segue back to the formal school environment. So I'm glad you mentioned that because I think that's going to be key for their successful transition.
Well, and you know, that's a $64,000 question in terms of what next year will look like, because we still don't know what will be required of us in terms of those remote kids. You know, will there still be a remote option? As you know, the Orleans Niagara Bosa superintendents have, along with the Erie Niagara School superintendents, have sent a letter to state ed stating that we would not be in agreement to offer a remote option next year. But will we be required to do so for students? We don't really. If students want to, you know, we would have, there is a mechanism for students to learn remotely, and that's through our home teaching for students that we have a medical issue that would require them to do that. We would give a process to do that, or there's homeschooling, obviously. not the students. But so if there are lingering medical issues, we had a process prior to COVID before that. But to the extent that we're going to be required to do something beyond that, I don't think.
So I'm just gonna circle back to the secondary programs again, and a lot of this was touched on a couple of times, so I'll try to be brief on some of those details, but I will expand. The summer camp, again, is based on the data that we got out of Ymca, and I was gonna mention that those remote students that hadn't taken Ymca are also part of that teacher recommendation wave of students that are also coming in. There was a little bit of a later assessment period with the Ymca and the secondary data. So elementary is a little bit further ahead of us in terms of the recruitment of students, but we hope to have our final numbers by the end of this week or early next week. Similar invitations and things will be sent out to specify the exact session and things like that. But because of that Ymca data, the focus of the camp will be based on skills rather than content. So the teacher will be able to look at the data that comes out of Ymca and identify specific skills and work on like more of a project-based type of learning experience that can enhance those skills or allow them to work on those skills. Again, it's a summer camp, so it's, we want to try to make it more learner friendly. We want to make it kind of fun for them, and the teachers have talked about doing something interdisciplinary and things like that. Summer school is more content-based, and this is going to be based on students that have failed the course. And so, again, they're doing this in Apex, and within the Apex program, there's something called a prescribed model. Students can take a pre-test. Apex will assess what content areas in that subject they didn't achieve as high as they should, and it will give them only that work to do. So it's not like they have to go through the entire Algebra 1 course. They will go through the parts of Algebra 1 that they need to do in order to recover that credit. That credit. And that same method could be applied for any subject through Apex. But again, some of these students might be remote students. Some of them may have been in person, but they will have access to a certified teacher the whole length of time of the program for assistance with that. Yes.
When you say access to the teacher, is it the teacher is in the classroom, or do the students have to seek out the teacher? Because I see problems with that initial having to seek out a teacher.
The teacher will be in front of them.
Okay.
So the plan right now is we're going to utilize the cafeteria and the band room. Those are large teaching instruction areas. And it kind of depends on how many students we get, but I'll get to the numbers on this in a minute. But we would plan to have, at least 2 teachers in each room, and then have the students be able to rotate at some point during the day. So that maybe they work on math in the morning, and they're with a math teacher in the morning, and then they work on, say, social studies, whatever subject area is in the afternoon. And either the teachers will switch or the students will switch. And again, some of those logistics will be figured out once we have our exact numbers of, how many students need math and how many students need social studies.
And specifically, my question was, does the teacher seek out the students too? Because they do not seek out teachers. I personally.
Okay, monitor.
They will be monitoring through Apex constantly, so they will be able to see exactly where students are at. Like, they should know you should be getting this far today. And let's say they, got half of their work done, they'll be able to see that and prompt them through, help them if they see that they're falling short on something. So yeah, the teacher should be. It'll be both ways.
The teacher should be engaging and also like, hey, you missed this question 5 times. Let's go over this now. And don't try again until we talk.
Absolutely. Okay.
So the kids are really driving the length of time that they need to
They are.
study for camp.
Yeah, we felt that was the most fair to the students because, let's say a student failed with a 60. Is it fair to make that student that failed by 5 points do the same amount of work as someone that maybe, didn't do half the work that they did, maybe they failed with a 40 or something like that. So we want to prescribe a program that is tailored to their needs. And also, somebody that failed, this person that failed with a 60 and this person that failed with a 60 may have missed different pieces of that curriculum. So we want to give them the things that they really need so that, I'm using Algebra 1 as an example, when they move on to Algebra 2, they worked on the things in Algebra 1 that they really missed, and it'll help prepare them for the next step. So with summer school, those numbers are going, we do have an idea of some of the students that are at risk, but a lot of those numbers won't be solidified until exams and at the end of the school year, which makes that part a little tricky, because if you're trying to coordinate things with busing and numbers with your teachers and things like that, we won't have that final number until really the end of June. So it's going to be kind of a mad dash at the end, and there's not much of a way around that, but we are working with the guidance counselors who have an idea which students might be at risk for this. And if nothing else, it'll provide motivation to talk to the parent and say, it looks like you might be trending this way. This is what the summer school program looks like if you need it. And then if the student's like, oh man, I might have to go to summer school, maybe they pick it up and they nail their exam and they move on. So again, the program will last up to the full 6 weeks of the summer school, but if they complete the necessary work early, then they're done. So they don't.
There are no Regents exams in August, so we're not required to. If this was a traditional summer school, secondary summer school was prescribed by the state. So I taught summer school for years and years and years, and these are for kids that failed courses, but then also kids who came from other parochial schools and failed courses and those kinds of things. This is we're not prescribed to do that this year. It's really, we can tailor it to the needs of our students rather than the traditional summer school, which is a bit onerous.
Thank you. That's an important note. The only minimum that the state says is a minimum of $20 for summer school if you have to go.
But for the secondary, if you roll over in the full 6 weeks, potentially if the student has troubles.
Correct.
Unlike the elementary where it's 3-week sessions per child.
Well, they still have to finish their apex. Whatever ultimately is prescribed as a result of the pre-testing, they're going to have to finish that at the minimum. Yeah.
Credit accrual, these are for students, and we have about a half a dozen right now, and that number hopefully will grow. Those students are looking to get ahead. So they look at it and say, I can free up some time in my schedule, maybe to take something else that I really want, or maybe it's a student that fell behind because of something else and they're trying to make up time. They can get credit ahead of time for health, participation in government, economics, or English 12. So we had a discussion today because some students signed up for all of that. And I'm like, well, you need 45 hours for a half credit and 90 hours for a full credit. Let's sign you up for one, see how you do, and then if you have time, we'll go on to the next one. So that's how we're going to do it, because really those hours are logged through Apex. It doesn't have to be in front of the teacher, so they can. If they want to work through the weekends and all night, they really could log those hours. But I also said, how much do you really expect a student to do over the summer, and then help you to do 180 hours or something like that in a span of time. So we'll sign them up for one. We'll make sure they get that done, because you need to have them try to work on 3 and they don't end it. We'll do one at a time and make sure that they get through it.
The state regs allow for students, so those allow for students to advance in those courses ahead. So consequently, generally we offer health in the 10th grade year. There are some students based on their schedule that don't take health because they're trying to take other courses. And then also participation in government. A child in their senior year is only required to take social studies, English, and PE. Generally the only students that have ever that try to get ahead are those students either they're trying to free up their schedule to take an AP course or something like that, so they want to get those courses out of the way. If they're not taking a course that covers that, so if they're taking, let's say, AP economics, like this as an example, we have built into the AP economics course the participation in government portion. So seniors who are taking AP economics are getting their participation in government credit. Seniors who are taking AP English literature are getting their English 12 credit. Every now and then, there's a student or two or three that wants to graduate early. And so those students in the past, when they wanted to graduate early, and they've usually self-identified themselves to their counselor by their 9th or 10th grade year. Their parents said, my child is interested in. There's a variety of different reasons why kids want to graduate early. But if they want to graduate early, they take these courses at BOCES so that they can graduate and get them on the way. The state says that if you are graduating early, you do not need to fulfill your PE requirement. It's the only time that you can waive the PE requirement is if the child is trying to graduate.
That particular one is only for high school students or also to be high school students, like 8th graders that are going?
Because those are, I guess that's a good question about health. I think health might be the only one that a 9th grader could
Correct.
take.
They would,
An incoming 9th grader.
an incoming 9th grader could take that. There are some schools that offer health.
Yeah.
So the only course that would be open to an 8th grader going to 9th grade would be to get health on. But you couldn't take a 12th grade. Yeah, there's a,
English 12.
There's a
I know that.
sequence.
right.
Yeah.
There's a sequence and there's
Yeah.
a prescribed unit of studies that has to be taken before you can test.
So as you can see, Nick and I are really teaming on all these programs. We're talking constantly. I have a little more focus on the elementary because of my experience, and he does at the secondary. But we are truly teaming this, and it's been a real fast and furious
That's the last 2
collaboration.
weeks, but no.
But it has, it's going to pay off dividends in the end. And I'm so appreciative for this opportunity for all of our students who are able to come. And we're really looking forward to it.
So Nick, I know we were a little worried about the middle school learning medication program this summer camp. Those numbers were low. Are they still low?
They're still low, but as I said, the second wave of recommendations are going to go. We're having the teachers actually try to reach out rather than just a bulk email, because if the teacher reaches out, they tend to kind of explain a little more. They have a more personal connection with the student. They can kind of explain why it might be a benefit to them. So we're hoping to
You
get
said
more.
of those 90 that initially went out, about 18 or something like that.
We have 9 currently that have responded back.
Oh, okay.
We anticipate to get, I would say about 20 to 30, which would be enough for one session. So unless we get a much larger response from the second wave of recommendations, we'll probably run the first session. When the initial registration link went out, we asked parents, because we weren't sure what those numbers would look like. We sort of anticipated the enthusiasm for middle school would be a little lower for summer camp, if I'm being honest. But
Well, I guess I'm concerned in that I thought you said there were 15 or 18, but which is no problem. But that initial 90 are students below benchmark.
they are either high or moderate risk according to
Yeah,
ESO.
so I'm just concerned that we're not making a very detailed, concerted approach with these families. Are the counselors and
Yeah.
the administration at the middle school, along with the teachers, is there a concerted effort to call these families and explain how important this is?
Yeah, so the list of recommendations went
I'm
out.
talking about the 90, I'm not talking about the new list, I'm talking about those initial.
Yeah, so that initial list went out last week. We said that those were the students that were recommended. We asked that teachers and guidance counselors review that list and make contact to those families and then add to the list with their own recommendations. And this week, along with the new recommendations, we're going to be making some more phone calls to encourage more families to take advantage.
Now, how many, I'm interested to know, of those 90, how many of those kids are gonna end up failing class and then
We
get
talked
another
about,
recommendation to be at the summer school program rather than the camp program?
we talked about that, and there will be, I don't want to have a black and white policy on that because every student is unique. And so there will be students that, middle school is a little different than high school because it's not credit bearing, right? So you don't have to make up a credit in sixth grade science, for example, if you fail, it'll say that sixth grade math. Maybe that student would be better served working on the skills that they're lacking rather than the content or something like that. It could be a combination of both, but that's going to be really an individual discussion. So there could be students that are recommended for both summer camp and summer school, and we'll have to work with the teachers.
Yeah, but I would highly recommend that tomorrow you schedule a very pointed meeting with the middle school administration and the middle school counselors to get on the phone and call these people and explain how important this is. Because when we send out 90 and we only get 10% back, the kids who need this, it's concerning.
It hasn't closed yet. So
No, I know, but that's concerning. You know,
Yeah, I know.
we heard that we had 80 initial responses. Now it's only 3 grade levels as opposed to 5 grade levels. 6 grade levels. So I mean, I get it. But nevertheless, that's a very low return.
I agree.
I think there's a difference. I think an
Oh, no
elementary
doubt.
student and parent is a much different audience than a middle school student and parent. So there's.
Without a doubt. And of those initial 90, if you had told me that you had gotten 20 or 30, I would be pretty happy because that's a third of them responding back. But it's concerning when we only get 10% of the kids. You're already focusing on, you know, the bottom 10, 15% of students based on the Ymca score. So we really need to try to build that program a little bit. Only because, you know, that those kids are going to really struggle next year.
Agreed.
And we do have, you know, the support specialists ready to engage them through what Dr. Rucker described, but that's concern.
Do you think it was just how it was being presented to the parents and the kids?
I think whenever you can, if we would have just sent the Google survey out.
This really sucks.
Well, I think there's the initial survey.
Cameras, you know, I'm sorry, not to say cameras, but that, you know. what we
It's
saw-
Cameras is Candyland, and this is
It's not
Dungeons
Candyland.
and Dragons.
No.
Administrators need to be looking at it.
I'm not sure what Candyland is, but
I'm just thinking.
you're gonna be working your tail off.
I need something for them potentially over the summer. What's that? I have more control. Whereas my secondary kids, I may not feel as obliged to find something for them to do during the day to keep them busy because they can do that for themselves in a way that a 5-year-old or 6-year-old can't.
I'll also say, I have a kindergartner at home. If I felt it was really in his best interest to go, I would say you're going. If I have a nephew that's in 9th grade, so not the same as middle school, but if I were to say, hey, you know, this learning camp's recommended, what do you think? He's gonna kick and scream, and it may not be worth it to me to argue with him every day about it. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I mean, like, if you have a parent that's really explained all the benefits, they may, you know, make that leap and have them come. So we're working on it. We recognize the importance of it. I also have a feeling that some of those students that were recommended will end up being faced with summer school. And in that instance, you can give them the option. You can say, you know, summer camp may serve you better, you know, and so you might get a couple students that way as well. But when you have a largely voluntary program at the middle school, I'm not sure how many of them are gonna jump to it as much as
I totally agree, which is why
Yeah, so there's all that, but really it's that we had 5th grade numbers that started at 4. Okay.
you can see it tailing off.
So you see that, but the personal touch does make a difference. So I agree with you, Paul, that the reaching out, whether it's a counselor or a teacher of that
Or a
student who
minister.
really needs it, those are the personal contacts that will increase registration. I mean, at first, we weren't sure, do we even have enough for one section for fifth
Send
grade?
me
Yeah.
50 names and I'll.
Yeah. So
They'll get a call from the superintendent inviting them.
You're on.
middle school, just so you know, we invited elementary a week before middle school. So they had a little more time to register. And now we're at the point for middle school now where we really should have some more personalized content.
Yeah, because the secondary program, you know, they're still trying to figure out, you know, is the
Yes.
kid failing or not failing, or is it gonna be able
That's
to pass or
exactly
not
right.
pass and
That's exactly
all
right.
that.
I don't know if you can, I don't know if you can ask this of your teachers. You might be able to. Some of those children who are on the list that are saying, not responding, saying no. Could you send out that list to elementary teachers and say, were any of these your favorite students? And could you make the call? Because I know when I was a teacher, when a parent would come back to me and say, should I put my child in this program? I mean, it was that connection because I had gotten along with their family. I don't know, it's just a suggestion.
I mean, I'm not doubting that there is already great relationships forged in the middle school. I don't think that personal touch has been fully employed yet, but it will be. And I think once that does, we'll see.
You make a good point.
I'm not concerned that we won't get at least double or triple that number.
And Mrs. Jaruzelski called me and said, hey, listen, you know, I'm helping out the middle school and I heard that you got invited. I would, you know, I think, you know, you did great in my class, but that might help you. I'm just kidding. That's interesting.
I'll send you your list tomorrow, Jill.
I can feel the time sensitivity to the personal calls though, because I think in many of these, seventh graders, this is their last.
Yes.
Checking out.
Yeah, I get
The
that.
final exams are going on right now.
Our middle school has a team approach too, so I mean, they don't necessarily have to have the math teacher call all those things. They can do it as a team and break. So that's, it's not a heavy,
You need
you know, they
another
can certainly. do
Were
that.
those the Google surveys that went out or emails?
They were Google surveys, yeah.
Just Google surveys?
And I was thinking too, like historically, how many kids that the middle school has been able to turn out during the summer for like the 8th grade honors project, or things where they, you know, you have kids of the same age group that were, you know, they were giving up their time during the summer, they were coming in, you know, the kids that they come in to do website, I mean, I think there's ways of kind of selling it to people. You know, maybe that's
Those are
that's all.
highly motivated kids, and
They are, but maybe there's a way to motivate.
it's difficult.
But one of the beauties of this district is that we're a one campus district. So sometimes those connections, I think, are utilized enough. Having come from a district that was all different buildings, we didn't have the ability to follow.
Different
everybody.
feeling, yes.
Whereas teachers here really can hear how a kid is doing. So I just think, you know, if you could figure out a way to do it.
But I really wonder if parents are waiting for those final grades to come in to see if, hey, maybe Johnny will pass because he's at a 6B right now, and if he does well on his exams, then he doesn't have to do something.
It's true.
It might be too late for this, but could we do something like we were talking about with Handbook, where you send a survey that needs a response, either affirmative or negative. So if a parent is saying, I'm not interested, they're really not interested instead of just not.
Yeah, so that's interesting you bring that up because what we sent out for elementary, which middle school mirrored, was they could say no or yes. Nobody said no. So the only responses we got were affirmative, which I found interesting because if they weren't interested, they just didn't fill it out.
Well, that's what I mean, like, maybe you
Yeah.
would say, if you don't
Yes.
fill this out, we're gonna contact you. Right, so force them to say no, and then you know that they contemplated it, they read it, they understand.
That's what I'm wondering, how
And
much,
that's just
how much
what you
reading went into the Google Doc that was sent out?
Well, I think that, again, with the phone calls, we'll get an answer verbally, or at least we'll make sure they draw attention to, like, maybe they didn't see it, you know, there's a lot of different things. I mean, all of them had emails in public school, But sometimes emails change or, you know.
This is making me wonder out loud here, right? Probably. Yeah, I don't think it's a leap to say that our elementary parents are the same parents as our middle school parents and or have the same skill set that our elementary parents have. Right? There's nothing that happens to the parent when the child gets to middle school. Therefore, it is safe to say that if the parents receive the same or similar survey, and we have one set of parents who responded more or less on math, and another set who didn't respond on math, that's not a function of the survey itself or our communication if we approach it in the exact same way. It's a function of the recipient's response to that.
I wonder if there's survey fatigue in this.
But again,
In
it's the same
upper-
thing.
but in the upper level though, I think, and I have elementary and I have secondary, and I step back quite a bit from secondary and I wait for that report card. I try not to be on them for every single grade because that's the learning process too in the middle school to get out there and do it yourself. Because I can't hold your hand when you're in college. And I wonder how many parents are taking that approach in middle school fairly early or fairly late, but taking that approach and saying, I'm gonna sit back, I'm gonna wait for that final grade to come in. And if you really need it, hopefully I can still get you in or talk to you then.
I guess my point to share this is to say, I don't think there was some type of ball drop or something that could have, should have been different in terms of the approach that was taken here, because the approach worked with the elementary. It was parallel at the middle school level. The response rate and the desire for middle school camp, it is not surprising to me, and I doubt it's surprising to anybody in here that it would be lower. I think the question is, does the response rate as it is that indicative of a lack of interest, or can we leverage some greater level of interest by doing some more personal communication, which was done at the elementary level at this point in the process, and that is where middle school is. So I guess that's what I'm thinking. I think Nick is on this, and we're just at this point.
I'd like to say that I think you're doing a phenomenal job. Actually, I do. I really
No
do.
one is,
We were doing this a short period of time ago. You've gotten on it, you've gotten kids to participate, we've put together documents, we've got a program in place. It's the way the whole year has gone. And I think you are doing a phenomenal job. And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be critical at all. It was just a
no one's
suggestion.
being critical.
No.
And quite frankly,
I want you to know that I think you're doing a phenomenal job.
I was just gonna say, I don't think
We
anyone's being
appreciate
critical. You know, sometimes we get caught up in that. How can we help?
It's
We're trying to
not
brainstorm
surprising.
ideas, so
it is
it's
100%, it is 100% not surprising that you're having difficulty gaining the attendance and the commitment at the middle school level. And I'm going to guess at the high school level as well. The motivation will be we generally don't have a lot of class failures, but even at the high school, let's say that we have, I'll use an example, 50 failures over 9 grade levels in classes. We only generally send 20 or 30 kids to summer school. So roughly half of the kids that fail a class don't try to make it up in summer school. Traditionally, it's a difficult, but there's other factors involved here, and there's some triangulation of some data here that I don't necessarily want to get into here, but there's definitely social emotional issues, there are familial issues, there are other issues at play here besides what we're discussing. That is why we need to reach out on a personal level and try to capture as many as we can, because we know that it will help those students get back on track. These are the kids now, start to separate the rubber on the road here, in that, there are some kids that just don't make it. And, you know, that's in every school district. We try to mitigate that as best as possible, but there are, in any given year, there are 2 to 3 to 5 to 6 to 8 kids that just don't make it.
If I may, I think we're still at halftime. You know,
Yeah,
so which is why
absolutely.
I'm not, you know, I don't mean to display like a lack of urgency. We're at halftime. I think that if you look at the elementary numbers, I mean, those numbers almost doubled in the last week. So I mean,
Yeah.
we have time, and there's still, you know, methods we haven't employed.
Listen.
Yeah, so we're gonna get there.
I was the summer school principal at, you know, Central when I was an assistant principal, and that was my thing, you know, I got to be the summer school principal. And I mean, we were on the last day when teachers are turning in their grades. Now we are contacting all the kids that failed. So it happens, I get it, it happens quickly at the secondary level, and it happens at the very end. So
That's right.
all I'm saying is, for the learning camp, I think that personal contact, as it can start to happen this week and even into next week, kids aren't necessarily here, but someone is making that outreach from the school to remind them that there's still a chance to get in this and get in the program.
Absolutely.
Thank you, everyone, for
Yeah,
listening,
sure.
for all
You
your
guys, I
great
told you.
suggestions and your questions.
Tamara, I told you yesterday, you guys are doing a
Shows you're
great job.
really on.
You really are.
Yeah.
I am very impressed with the work and the collaboration that you and Nick, along with Heather and Patty, are building this program, because we've never done it before here at Lewiston-Porter, and, you know, I am very impressed with what you're putting together.
Can I ask you a quick question for the credit accrual? How is it getting out at the high school? Is there somewhere that they can,
So
I didn't see it on the website.
to this point, it's been going out through guidance, but as Tamara alluded to, we're still putting together we're putting together a faculty handbook and then also like a family handbook.
Okay.
And so that'll be sent out in the next couple of days, and that'll be another way to sort of advertise it. With high school, I would say high school specifically, when anything with credit recovery or credit accrual, there's a lot of, you know, regulation you have to pay attention to, like the number of hours, and you have to have a certified teacher, you have to have a certified librarian on staff, and the stuff, like all these different things that we really, because we haven't done it before, sort of learning that manual that goes with summer school. It's not like I could ask last year's summer school teacher what they did, you know what I mean? So we're kind of building it from scratch in the last 14 days. So we're putting it together, but that will be coming out. Within that book, there will be a registration link to say, hey, I'm looking to take, you know, health or select all of the above, and it'll explain how that will progress them through that. But we staffed it, so we know that we have someone that can, is a certified health teacher, a certified social studies teacher, and an English teacher ready to go. You hate to offer a course and then not have a teacher teach it. So in some of these cases, you didn't know what to start with. Do I start with, you know, do I hire a teacher, but then no students take it, or do I get the students and then all of a sudden I'm a teacher to teach the course? So luckily, it's all coming together rather nicely. One other thing that I want to say, I think somebody mentioned it, I apologize if you said it, but with regard to waiting maybe for the grades to come in middle school, I think that once you get to that secondary level, parents become a lot more focused on grades as opposed to skills, where they are in the elementary. My son is in kindergarten, he wasn't in grades, but I can tell you that I'm gonna brag for a second. He's reading at like where he should be at the end of first grade. I know that he has that skill. I couldn't tell you what grade he has in reading or writing. I am much more attuned to the skills that he has rather than his grades. So I don't know that parents are as concerned right now, and maybe that's something we can work on as a district, to looking at those skills. But that might play into it too. And in those personal conversations, those things could be more further developed between the teacher or the guidance counselor with the parent to impress the importance of some of them. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Right, moving on. Policy review committee.
Well, our policy meeting got cut a little short due to the executive session, so we are going to move forward with our second reads because there really were no issues with any of those policies, but we're gonna hold on, all of the first read until the next policy.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to move on to business. I'd like to move to approve NA1, approval of the HVAC contractor bid. If I may have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Yes? Any opposed? Carried. I'd like to move to NA2, approval of the contractor for inspection, testing, and monitoring services. Phase 1 capital project. If I may have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Yes? Any opposed? Carried. I'd like to move to approve NA3, approval of the YMCA summer contract for the summer of 2021. If I may have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Yes? Any opposed? Carried. And I would like to move to approve NA4, approval of the NCI construction and CIR electrical for the phase 1 of capital project. If I may have a second. Any discussion? All in favor? Yes? Any opposed? So carried. I would like to move to approve the consent agenda for personnel. If I may have a second.
On the question,
Any discussion?
I just wanted to introduce someone who's been very patient with us. She's been sitting here very patiently. I don't know if it's interesting or not.
Actually, I did.
Very good. Well,
Kind of fascinating.
This is Anita Shepherdson, and she's going to be our new high school French teacher, replacing Mark Cousins. Our French program has continued to maintain some solid population, and we're very excited for Anita to come on and continue to work with our students and grow our second language program, our language of English. So, Anita, where are you coming to us from?
I'm coming to you from Mount St. Mary Academy.
Excellent.
That's where I was this year.
All right, that's awesome. Well, it's
Well,
great,
welcome.
great to have you, and I've heard nothing but great things, and had a chance to speak with you in the hallway, and I think you're going to be a great fit for Lewiston-Porter. So we'd like to welcome you, and I know the board would welcome you as well to the Lewiston-Porter family. So welcome.
Thank you.
Very welcome.
Any other questions? for the consent agenda? All in favor? Yes? Any opposed? So carried. Welcome, Anita.
Thank you.
Sorry, that's you.
Yes. All right, and at this point, I would like to move to enter into executive session. Executive session will be held to discuss contract negotiations and the employment contract of a particular employee. I'm going to say that if we take maybe just like 5 minutes, just so everyone who isn't part of the executive session, move on out, and everyone in case anyone wants to go to the restroom or anything. So we'll be right back up at 8 o'clock, and at that point, we will enter into executive session.
The ending of the meeting.
If we will not take any action, we will enter adjourning from executive session, so.
No action.
And before anybody leaves, happy birthday, Jill.
Oh.
Jill, it's your birthday?